Please welcome back from CNN, Bill Weir.
Greetings, Earth optimists. I'm Bill Weir of CNN, and welcome to our panel on Waste Not, Want Not. It is staggering to realize that if food waste was a country, it would be the third largest in the world when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions. So we're looking for solutions, scalable ideas, full of optimism and promise, and we have a great panel for you. Let me introduce you. We have Tristram Stuart. He is the founder of Feedback and Post Ale. He takes bread that would get thrown away, turns it into beer, gives the money to charity. That's a win-win-win, I think, all the way across the board. We have Evan Lutz, the CEO and co-founder of Hungry Harvest. Also, Justen Garrity, founder and co-president of Veteran Compost. And Tambra Raye Stevenson. She's the founder and CEO of Wanda. That's Women Advancing Nutrition, Dietetics, and Agriculture. Happy Earth Day to all of you. Thanks for being here. Why don't we start out with Tristram? Basically, because I'm fond of beer. Tell us about Feedback, what your mission is and what's working for you.
Well, first to clarify, I'm not anymore in the organization Feedback. I founded Feedback many years ago, and it was my life for around 10 years. And the purpose of that organization was really to deliver to the world the ideas that I'd laid out in the book that I published in 2009, Waste, Uncovering the Global Food Scandal, where I calculated for the first time that at least a third of the world's food was currently going to waste. In the context of the situation where food is the single biggest negative impact that humans have on planet Earth. It's the biggest cause of deforestation, by far the biggest cause of species extinction, by far the biggest user of fresh water. You know, you name it. The food system is behind most of the really big ecological problems and many of the social problems that we face on Earth. And then the fact that we waste 1/3 of it, that is obviously scandalous. It's pretty depressing, but it's also a huge opportunity. And indeed, the Drawdown Project, Paul Hawken's Drawdown Project, has identified food waste as probably the top most easiest, cost-efficient way of cutting our environmental impact and cutting carbon dioxide emissions. And at the same time, when I started campaigning on this issue, food waste was really not an issue. It was something that big supermarkets and other industry bodies were, well, sweeping under the carpet, frankly. Public awareness was at a low ebb. Governments really weren't on the case. And so I felt like really the main job of Feedback ought to be to raise awareness, to put this on the agenda, to reveal and lift the lid on this scandalous quantity of waste, its causes, and most importantly, of course, what solutions we could push for to drive that. We tried to use inspiring, engaging, visual, interactive ways. Events like Feeding the 5,000, which we did all over the world, including several in the USA, where we fed several thousand people with food that would have been wasted, just to show how much perfectly good, delicious food was being wasted, and to showcase the wonderful organizations who are already on the case trying to tackle it. So that was really the job of Feedback.
Interesting. I at least find in my home, in the lockdown, I'm much more conscious of what I bring in, what I throw away. I hope other families are as well. Evan Lutz, tell us about Hungry Harvest and what's your solution to the problem that Tristram laid out.
We're a produce delivery service on a mission to fight food waste and hunger. We care a lot about how much food is going to waste and understand that the statistics are simply astonishing. In our grandparents' generation, there was simply no such thing as this much food waste. And our modern centralized food system, which has been globalized in a lot of different ways, where we're importing and exporting, it's good for a lot of reasons, but it's also bad because it causes a lot of waste. And so what my organization does is we purchase produce that would otherwise go to waste from farms, from packing houses, from wholesalers, everywhere pre-retail in the supply chain. And we deliver it to consumers for a subscription, a weekly subscription. So we're trying to bring awareness to this problem by putting a brand behind this produce and trying to solve it practically by connecting the lost supply with consumers that are hungry for it.
Interesting. Tambra Raye, I'd love to get your thoughts on food as a social justice, as a climate justice piece of all of this. And we know about food deserts, and it's great if everybody could grow their own garden. Most families are just trying to get through the day. What is your program advancing, and what solutions are you most excited about?
Most definitely. So Wanda, we are based here in Washington, D.C., in an area that would be called a food desert, but the new terminology is really food apartheid because it's a systemic issue that has been rooted in historical anchors. And so we focus on the idea of we need stronger representation of women and girls as leaders in creating the solutions in their communities that's rooted in resiliency of our ancestors, rooted in resourcefulness, which is really the root cause of how we create this food waste issue. Understanding that by reclaiming the rich biodiversity of food in our culture, it can not only change how we see the trajectory of the planet, but actually our health. So we focus on this idea of education through our Wanda webinars. We have one tomorrow on Farmer Now, Doctor Later. How do we grow our food? How can our food be as medicine? And also, we will be launching this summer the Wanda Academy as an online premier platform for women who are eager to be these food heroes that our communities desperately need. We have rich history in our communities where people who have been hidden figures in the food system have been making do and making a way out of no way. And we need to educate ourselves on that history that has not been documented in our mainstream educational system. And we need to gain the advocacy skills to change the policy and shift the power in the food system and encourage the idea of entrepreneurship or being a change agent inside existing organizations in order to see that happen. And on a small scale level, we created the Where's Wanda book series that features a little girl character who is named Little Wanda, who goes and promotes a plant-based food system rooted in her African cultural foods by learning how to grow, cook, and eat these foods, and teaching her community to be the change that we need to see in our communities as well.
That's so fantastic. Anytime I'm lucky to share a story with fishermen or farmers and they feed me afterwards, I realize how cut off we are in the modern world from knowing where our food comes from. The reverence for that. I was just talking to a chef last night from Michigan, and her family, native family, they every year ramp season, the wild onions, and it's part of their tradition. And it seems quaint, but that's how we survived as hunter-gatherers for so long, and it's going to have to be that way again to save what's left of our home. Justen Garrity, let me bring you in, veteran Compost. Tell me about that program and how it's working.
Sure. So we're very literal what it sounds like. We hire veterans and do composting. So our business is to collect and compost food scraps in Maryland, DC, and Northern Virginia. So our trucks are out every day picking up from people's homes, offices, and businesses. And then we take that food scrap material back to our compost facilities in Maryland and Virginia, and we turn it into soil. So in about 90 days, your orange rind or crab shells can be turned back into soil. And this time of year is the fun time of year where we're helping people get their gardens going and helping farmers get their fields going. So all that compost we've been making all year is going back into food production instead of going into a landfill. So we're kind of the end of the line for food or food waste and turning it back into something that's useful.
Is it a business model or a charity? Is there a market for the compost, or how do you sustain something like that and scale it?
It's for profit. That's the goal. I can't say it's profitable every day, but we've been in business for 10 years and we've been profitable for the last 8.5. So the goal is to grow and scale the business, continue to take in new material. The hiring of veterans is just part of our social mission. So I was a veteran. When I came back from Iraq, I couldn't find a job and kind of happened into this as a business idea. And so now it's kind of my way of sending the elevator back down for other folks.
It's inspiring. Well, I'm interested in going back around the horn here and getting your thoughts on how this pandemic is changing our lives as we know it, how it might change things going forward. If you could redesign our food system, from scratch. I mean, we're seeing how meat production plants are shutting down. They're having trouble getting field workers in places to pick our produce. So let's go back to Tristram and just give me your thoughts on, if you had a magic wand, once we come out of our quarantines, how would you see things change?
Oh, God. Well, you mentioned that you think you're wasting less food, and that seems to be the case across the board. The surveys in the UK and the USA suggest that people are cooking at home more by necessity, but even that 50% in the US intend to carry on cooking as much afterwards. They're valuing food more. At the same time, people are noticing wildlife, they're noticing cleaner airs. This is something that affects both rich and poor. The environment that we're living in has been polluted, and we are suddenly getting a sight of what Earth would be like if we didn't have quite so many unnecessary polluting and damaging activities going on. Now, the wasting of food is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the kinds of changes that we need to put in place if we're going to overcome the mega crisis, and that is the ecological one that we've been sleepwalking through for the last few decades. And whilst I think it is a moonshot to imagine that after this crisis, we'll keep in place enough of the remedial policies that would be necessary to restore the wonderful health of the life that we all depend on this planet. That is at least what I dream of. Of course, in this crisis, there is hardship, there is grief. The disparity in terms of the experience of lockdown between somebody in an apartment in a city and the fortunate people like myself who live in the countryside and have a huge vegetable garden that I can grow my own vegetables, that's a social issue in and of itself. But we can all hope that we get a window of opportunity to change the course that we've been on. We've seen already in cities like Milan that large areas are going to be pedestrianized potentially permanently. Now that people realize just how nice it is to breathe clean air, we can hope for a food system that has been reformed. People are already eating more healthily at home than they have been in the obesogenic environment that the USA food system has become. Food and bad diet is the single biggest killer in the USA. And this is an opportunity for people to say, well, wow, we survived for a few months without so much Coca-Cola and McDonald's that in fact has been, a part of our unhealthy diet and killing so many Americans. And this is true across the world, I think. People getting an opportunity, skilling up, people learning how to cook more or less for the first time because they suddenly A, have to, and B, they have the time to. And this right. could be a real turning point.
Evan, what are your thoughts on such a thing? There's a perception that organic and clean food is for hippies or the elites. What would you do if you could change things for the better?
I think we're starting to realize how fragile our food system is and how reliant it is on very few components. It's also incredibly complicated. One of the components that's incredibly reliant on is low-wage farm workers who actually go out and harvest fields. If you don't have people that are willing to do those jobs or able to do those jobs because of immigration or a lot of other issues related to COVID, then people simply aren't going to get food. That's one of the reasons why food prices are sort of artificially low, is because of the labor costs that are associated with actually harvesting fields. And I think that really needs to change. I do think we need to appropriately price foods so that people that are actually harvesting and picking our foods can make a living wage, and fix the food system so that we can find other avenues so there's not so much waste. We're seeing an enormous amount of waste right now across multiple different industries, especially in fruits and vegetables, who have contracts with food service providers that are being completely canceled and have no other way to source that product to other potential buyers. And I think that's really exposing some flaws in how overly complicated and centralized our food system is. It's relying on very few components. And I do think we need to get back to sort of a localized model of food where people are eating things that are in season, that are within a certain, call it 200, 300 mile radius of where they live, and building in the price of food so that people that are actually harvesting the food can earn a living wage.
Right. And also be great to incentivize more carbon farming that can pull, all that heat trapping carbon out of the sky, put it in the ground, sequester it there and help that. Tambra Raye, what should be the measure of success, you think, as we rate our food system in this country?
Most definitely. And just to touch on the last point, the global pandemic is definitely a wake-up call to the world. It's a question of, are we listening? Are we willing to respond? And in the West, we have focused so much on profitability at the expense of people and planet that we need to remember ancestors like the food justice advocate Fannie Lou Hamer, who said no one is free until everyone is free. And we have promoted this false narrative of individuality. I come from Oklahoma, a place where we supposedly pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, where I was a Future Farmers of America member, learned about nutrition. And I think in order for us to move forward post-pandemic is to look at how do we invest in America, which is the United States, not the divided states of America. And that means teaching food systems literacy, one that we advocate on our DC Food Policy Council that I serve, making more of a stronger connection between agriculture and nutrition. Right now, we have a disconnect in those investments, and subsidize our fruits and vegetables more than we do soy, corn, and wheat, and document the biodiversity of our cultural foodways just as much as we do the Mediterranean diet. And that means beefing up funds and USDA and NIH, their research agenda, when they identify cultural foods to do so in those investments. And we need to move in a direction, as our other colleagues just shared, about looking at regional foodways. How do we build an inclusive food economy and making sure that everyone is a co-creator and not just a consumer in the process of it?
Excellent. Justen will give you the final word at the 2-minute warning. I think we're having trouble hearing Justen. I don't know if we lost. Uh-oh. Yeah, sorry.
How's that?
Sorry,
Better?
brother. I think it sounds like your mic was muted there. Okay, better. Yeah, give it another shot.
Okay, how about the second take here? So in terms of kind of how composting fits into all of this, we on the kind of carbon side of things and helping the planet win twice, where when we compost material, we're keeping things out of the landfill and helping to sequester carbon into the soil with our finished compost. So as we look at what goes into the landfill every day in America, 2/3 of what's thrown away in every trash truck is compostable and could be a huge part of the solution. And then as folks talk about local food systems, that's a big part of what we do. We supply a lot of our final product to community gardens, urban farms, local, organic farms and things like that are helping to grow food. And so we see ourselves as a big part of taking that, enriching the soil, and allowing more food to be grown. So I think if people were to invest in their soils, then we'd be very happy with where our society's heading.
It's our common ground, no pun intended. Thank you all so much. A quick plug. I have a big feature-length documentary coming up Saturday night on CNN. It's called The Road to Change. It's a road trip into the past, present, and future of the climate crisis. It includes an act on sustainable farming with Al Gore on his farm down in Tennessee. And a lot of these themes are covered. But thank you all for your wisdom and your passion. If there's a heaven, you're all getting in. Keep up the good work. And to the audience of Earth Optimists, I'll see you in the next little conversation in a few minutes. Until then, Peace out.